What's up, folks? How's it going? This is Waj. Hope you guys are all doing well. And today we're going to be taking a look at the new Nacon Revolution Unlimited controller and comparing it against my favorite PlayStation 4 custom controller that you can get right now, the Astro C40 TR. Now, firstly, when it comes to the build material and overall design of both these two controllers, they feel very different in the hand. Now, as we mentioned before, the Astro C40 TR is definitely a lot beefier than most of the controllers that you're going to find out there. Certainly much more substantial than the stock DualShock 4 controller they get with your PS4. So it's ideal for people with larger hands or people that just like a larger controller. On the other hand, the Nacon Revolution Unlimited feels very similar to what you're going to find with an Xbox style controller, has a similar contours that you're going to encounter in the Microsoft style controllers, and very comfortable. It's a proven style design that not many people are going to have too many problems with. Now, both controllers utilize a textured rubber finish, which feels very grippy. It is going to attract a little bit of grease, but the trade-off will be the fact that you're going to definitely always have a nice secure fit and a nice grip on both of these two controllers, even though aesthetically eventually they're going to get a little mucky down the road. Now, in terms of weight distribution and overall mass, the Astro C40 controller weighs about 310 grams. The cool thing about the Revolution Unlimited is the fact that you can actually load up these cylindrical weights at the back of the controller. They come in a pair of 16, 14, and 10 gram increments respectively, so you can custom configure the left-right weight distribution and increase or decrease the overall weight of the controller itself, which is definitely an added level of customization not available on the Astro controller. Now, certainly one of the biggest selling points of the Astro controller is the fact that you can interchange the thumbsticks and the D-pads, allowing you to have a symmetrical or an asymmetrical thumbstick pattern depending upon your gaming style, your personal preference, and things like that. Now, due to the popularity of the asymmetrical thumbstick pattern thanks to the Microsoft controller, it's really probably ideal for playing first-person shooters than the traditional kind of DualShock 4 thumbstick pattern, which is all parallel and a little bit more cramped in my opinion. Now, as you can see on the Revolution controller, we're pretty much exclusively using an asymmetrical thumbstick pattern, which again, for most people is not going to be a drawback, probably optimal from an ergonomic perspective. But on the Astro, you do have that added level of flexibility that's pretty much unavailable in every other controller in the market. So that's definitely a unique attribute. Now, let's talk about some of the haptic attributes, specifically when it comes to the buttons, switches, triggers, thumbsticks, all that good stuff. Now, in terms of buttons and switches themselves, I think the Astro has higher quality switches. Definitely from my experience, they feel a lot more premium, have a nice tactile sensation, feel a lot more mechanical than the squishy style switches and buttons that we encounter on the Revolution Limited controller. On top of that, I remember a few years back testing out the original Nacon Revolution controller, and I remember the D-pad was pretty terrible. And although the D-pad on this has improved, it's still very soft and squishy. It's also mounted in a concave-like fashion, so it's not as immediate and as accessible as the clicky, more mechanical style straight edge D-pad that we have on the Astro. So if you're into fighting games and things like that, I would definitely go for the Astro, strictly because of the D-pad is definitely a lot more tactile, ergonomically friendly, and a lot more accessible. Now, the triggers also on the Astro feel a little bit nicely dampened, and they also have trigger stoppers. So if you want to enable something like a hair trigger mode for first-person shooters, you can limit the range of motion on the triggers themselves, versus you don't have that option on the Revolution controller. Now, ironically, the bumpers on the Revolution controller have a distinct mechanical click, something that's missing from the Astro, and I actually prefer it. I wish they utilize these switches on more of the buttons, but unfortunately it's pretty much an exclusive sensation that you get on the bumpers alone. Now, moving on, let's talk about some of the customizable features on the thumbsticks themselves. Now, with the Astro, you get the option to swap out thumbsticks with different heights and different tip textures, whether that's convex or concave. Now, on the Revolution Unlimited controller, you can also swap out the tips, whether you want concave or convex. But what's really interesting is you can actually interchange the thicknesses of the stems themselves on the thumbsticks, that by limiting the overall degrees of tilt. So the stock degrees of tilt for most controllers is around 46 degrees. You can limit that to 38, or 30 degrees of tilt with the different thicknesses available in the box itself. Now, in conjunction with the software, you can either optimize the sensitivity curve for speed or precision. So in the fact that you have a short distance to travel with the thumbsticks, and if you have a fast sensitivity curve on the thumbsticks themselves, you could potentially be faster in terms of reaction time, and just the amount of distance you have to travel with the thumbsticks will become less as well. You can also go with the opposite route of having the full degrees of range of motion on your tilt on the thumbsticks and decrease the sensitivity curve. That might be favorable for precise sniping operations and things like that, versus the other scenario would be good for running and directional movements. Now, beyond that, you're also going to notice that we have more custom profile configurations on the Revolution Unlimited controller compared to the Astro. The Astro basically has two different profiles to choose from. On the Revolution side, you actually have three individual modes, one for standard PlayStation 4 DualShock 4 default configuration. Another one is a PlayStation 4 Advanced that we'll talk about. And then the last one is PC mode. Now, the cool thing about the PlayStation Advanced mode is that you have four individual profiles to choose from. So you can essentially have one profile for a specific game or a specific mode in that particular game. So you could have a specific level of sensitivity for your thumbsticks, macro commands to the four macro buttons on the back of the controller versus the two on the Astro C40. So in terms of the level of profiles and overall custom buttons that we have, the Revolution is definitely superior on the Astro on that front. Now, one of the weakest parts about the Astro C40 is its integration with different headsets. Not only does it not have dedicated physical controls for volume and mute functionality, although you could probably do that on the headset itself, it's sometimes nice to have it on the controller like we have it on the Revolution Unlimited. You have dedicated volume buttons as well as mute functionality for your microphone on your headset. So we definitely have better headset integration over here compared to the Astro. Now, lastly, let's talk about the connectivity options as well as the battery life. Now, the technology that we're using for the wireless mode on the Astro C40 is a proprietary 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth frequency. That's going to give you better overall latency than the Bluetooth protocol that we use on the standard PS4 controller and indeed the Revolution Unlimited controller. So if you want the controller with the least amount of latency possible, you probably want to go with the Astro C40 if you're a competitive gamer or things like that. Both of these obviously can be used in full cable mode, which will eliminate any kind of latency issues if you're paranoid about that. And lastly, when it comes to battery life, we're looking at around, based on my experience, about 6 to 8 hours on the Astro C40, and this is after months upon months of usage. And I would definitely say you can get at least 2 more hours of usage on the Revolution Unlimited controller. I was averaging any between 10 to 12 hours on a single charge, which is definitely pretty darn good. Now, last but not least, let's talk about price. In terms of the Astro C40, you can pretty much get it on Amazon on sale these days for under $200, which is certainly a lot of money for a single controller, but that's kind of the standard kind of price range for higher end custom configurable controllers for the PlayStation, PC, and things like that. And when we take a look at the Nacon Revolution Unlimited controller, it's really only available in Europe in terms of its official resellers and retailers are mostly out there. You can get it in the US or on eBay for around $230 all the way to $250. So it's definitely a little bit more expensive, especially in the US and Canada compared to Europe. And from that price perspective, definitely the Astro is the better deal if you're coming from a North American gaming perspective. And just generally, if I had to pick one controller over the other, I'd probably eventually go with the Astro C40 based on my experience and my personal preferences. Really match the feel of that controller more so than the Revolution Unlimited, although it definitely has some cool features. I probably stick to the Astro going forward. Definitely love to hear your thoughts. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Big thank you so much for watching, and make sure you have post notifications turned on. That way you get our videos once they come out available. And thanks again for watching. We'll see you later. Take care.